Okay. All right, so you've written your QAPP and you found a lab, you've sampled your water, you get your data back, and what do you do with your data? You can put it into Ceden, the California Environmental Data Exchange Network. So I'm going to go over the 5 W's of Ceden, the who, what, why, where, and then we throw in the how, but not necessarily in that order. So starting off, what is Ceden? Ceden is a database that collects water quality related data from a variety of sources. We have it breaks down the data into different data categories. We have chemistry data, tissue data, toxicity data, taxonomy data, and then field data. Why does it exist? It's our primary source of data for assessing the quality of our water bodies. It was mentioned earlier about the 303D list and saying which water bodies are impaired or not. So it's a source of data for that exercise that the water boards go through. And it also just seems like a good idea. We spend a lot of money on monitoring and other people do as well. And so why not put it in one place in a compatible format so that it can then be reused. It increases the accessibility of the data and so that it can not just be used by the group that collected it, but by others as well. Who is Ceden? Anybody can be a data provider. We generally have data from the Surface Water Ambient Monitoring Program, which Melissa spoke about earlier. We also collect data from permittees that the water boards regulate if they have a requirement within their permit that says you have to get your data into Ceden. Grantees that we give money to if they have a water quality element for their project. Also, citizen monitoring groups that have data that they want to contribute. So that's who's providing the data. Then we have on the back end regional data centers that help people get their data into the database. They load the data for non-swamp data. Here at the state board, the swamp program loads their data into Ceden. Currently, we fund 2 regional data centers, the Moss Landing Marine Laboratories Regional Data Center and the Aquatic Science Center, which is part of SFBI, to help people get their data into Ceden. That doesn't mean they're going to format your data for you, but they will facilitate adding your valid values or controlled vocabulary into the database and again, just be the conduits for actually getting your data into the system. Moving on to how. This is a schematic that shows that we have data providers that work with the regional data centers, Moss Landing Marine Laboratories, as I mentioned, the Aquatic Science Center, and then I'm terming them here, contributing databases, swamp and water boards. We have a container here at the water boards that can do the same thing, act as a regional data center as well. Functionally, we do the same thing where we, on a weekly basis, provide a copy of the database that I work with, and then it goes through a weekly replication process. So every week this happens, and the data that's in the main Ceden, the blue container, the main Ceden database, gets overwritten or wiped out, and all new data are loaded into the system. And then on the backside, there are data access pathways so people can use and retrieve those data. Again, those are also updated. The data marts that supply those are updated on a regular basis as well. But more practically, how is it done? As a data provider, you can go to ceden.org, click on the Submit Data button, and follow the steps there. You want to review the guidance documents that show you the format so that the first column is your station and your second column is the date. So we have providing data in the same format so it can be ingested by the database that is being loaded into. You have to follow the same business rules so that the data makes sense to you, they can be used to work together. Then we have a whole slew of controlled vocabulary lists so that we're using the same spelling of copper or the same way to reference a certain method. So you have to get established vocabulary. As I mentioned, you can work with the regional data centers to do that. So you register your project and any other vocabulary you know up front to get those into Ceden. Then you do the hard work of formatting the templates, making sure that that your data are in the right formats, following the business rules. So that's really where all the work is. Depending on the format you start with, this could be an easier task or a harder task. But once you think you have it in the right format, you can send it through our data entry checkers. That's an upload process where it runs a bunch of checks to make sure that you indeed are following the right formats and you're using the right vocabularies. If you use a value that's not in the vocabulary list, you'll get an error message back saying your station is unknown, or the way that you're referencing this analyte is unknown. And then you can either, maybe it was an error and you can fix your error, or you can contact your regional data center to get a new value added to our controlled vocabulary lists. Once you have all your errors resolved, you may also have some warnings, things that may be wrong but aren't necessarily wrong. You want to take a look at those to make sure it's not a mistake, but you can move forward if you still have some warnings, because like I said, it's not necessarily wrong. It just raises a flag to say, hey, did you really mean to say this? And then you can submit your data to be loaded. It's a good idea then to wait until the next week when it can be made available through a report to make sure that what you've submitted is now showing up on the website, just to do that check to make sure that what you have provided actually shows up in the way that you think it should have been showing up. And so I'm going to try bring my microphone to sorry. Perfect. All right, so if we go to just any browser and go ceden.org, we get to the Ceden website. Along the left, you have the find data, submit data, some more information about Ceden. We do have a user group that meets on a regular basis, and then we have some procedures for updating templates and things like that. But we're going to go ahead and click on the submit data, and as I just talked about, you have these similar steps written here. You review the guidance, and this is really I think the most important link, because on this page it has the guidance documents that goes through each field, what each field in or column means in the templates, but then it also has the blank copies of the blank templates and example templates, so you can get a sense of we have this column here. It's called digest extract method. What kind of things would you expect to actually see there? So I've just opened the chemistry template. It's an Excel workbook. And it starts out with a notes information page with some links of people to contact, how to make new vocabulary requests, and some information about the update history of the template. And then it has different tabs. The chem results tab is where your monitoring result data go. In this example, we just have sediment chemistry examples, water chemistry examples, and bacteria examples. We put spaces in between to help you identify the different examples, but if this were really a template that had real data in it, you wouldn't want any blank lines, because then the system would just stop reading it and not get all of your data into the system. And then there's a lab batch tab, so you can record information about the batch. And so it is, there are many columns, but if you tackle them one at a time, and then it should be manageable. We have required fields with the green headers, default required with the regular black headers, and then and those are, if you don't know the actual value, you can use the default. A lot of times that's not recorded or NR. And then optional fields that are gray with the orange wording. And so that's just a look at the template there. Again, you can find all this on the Ceden website. So moving on to our when, this slide is really aimed at those who are wanting their data to be submitted or assessed through the Water Quality Assessment 303D list process. And we really encourage people to do that ongoing, so we don't get a whole slug of data right before they pull it for those reports. So we encourage ongoing submittal. But when that process does occur, a solicitation notice is sent out and generally publicized, so that you know your kind of end date of when the data need to be submitted in order to be considered for that particular assessment period. If you're not particularly interested in that process, there are no deadlines. It's just whenever you have data, you can submit them so that they can be used by whoever is interested. And then where can you find Ceden data? Melissa mentioned that it was a good idea to see what other projects are going on in your area of interest. And so this is one avenue that you can look into or Ceden data is a good avenue to look into, find what other projects are going on in your area of interest. And we have a few different ways to review those data that are submitted. We have our advanced query tool. When I went to the Ceden website, the first button that was there was the Find Data button, and that would take you to the advanced query tool, where you can query by data type, and then there are a variety of other selection criteria to filter the data, and you can retrieve it that way. We also provide Ceden data on data.ca.gov, which is the state's open data portal. There are many data sets there, so what I usually do if I'm looking for Ceden related data or data that's from Ceden is just put Ceden in the search box, and a variety of data resources and data sets will return. Ceden is also connected to the National Water Quality Monitoring Portal. We do have some still working on some vocabulary and business rules issues, so it's not 100% of the Ceden data get there, but we do have an ongoing flow that does provide data to that portal. And finally, we do have web services on Ceden. These were created before we started providing our data to data.ca.gov. And so we don't have a lot of customers that use them, or I don't know if we have any ongoing customers that use them, but if you want to try it out and are interested, you can contact me for an account on those. And just to review the highlights is Ceden is a collection of water quality related data. We want your data. You can contact a regional data center to help you, or ceden@waterboards.ca.gov. And also the website has, as I showed, all the information that you need to to start formatting your data, and that you can use the Ceden data that other people have provided at also on our websites and on the Open Data Portal and the National Water Quality Monitoring Portal. And I'm done early, so there's plenty of time for questions. And there's my contact information if you have any additional questions.
When it's been unmuted, you can ask your questions directly of Jarma. If those in the room, just raise your hand. We'll get a microphone to you. Burning question. RDCs. Audience of, I don't have any resources. Can somebody? Gift cards. What can we get?
Well, the regional data centers, as I mentioned, they are there to help you, but they can't take on, for free, they can't take on your reformatting all of your data for you. But formatting your data just does take time, and so if you have the time, you can do that yourself after you read the guidance documents, and then if you have questions, you can get questions answered for free at the regional data centers.
Guidance there are
definitely. Yes, definitely.
Actually ask questions of formatting. Obligated to help?
We fund them at a certain level to help get their data into the system by helping you establish your vocabulary and answer questions. And so I encourage you to contact them. The contacting me or the Ceden at waterboards.ca.gov address is also an option, but I'm not as timely in my responses, and so I encourage you to work with them. But there is definitely a line that they're there to help you and answer questions, but they can't take on the job of reformatting your data for you. So that, as we just covered, there is the commitment on your end to do that share of it. Yes, yeah, very different.
Well, you said the user groups meet. Where do they meet and when do they meet?
We meet via Skype call, so it's just a remote call-in. Our meeting schedule is, they're set for the third Thursday of every month at 10 a.m. If we don't have a lot of agenda items, we will cancel the meeting, so they're not every month, but if you send me an email, I can add you to the list and be part of it. Oh, there's one more.
So my question has to do, well, how far back in time does the database go? And how do you handle changing protocols? And in particular, I'm thinking Contra Costa County, there was a lot of really great benthic macroinvertebrate data collected in the mid-2000s, which doesn't seem to be on Ceden. And I was, wondered whether that's because the protocols were sort of evolving in the mid-2000s. So, and I know that Helen knows some of this stuff, but my question is, and I work a lot with Helen, so I can ask her too, but how far does it go back and what do you do about changing protocols is basically my question.
So in terms of for how far it goes back, we have data to the 80s and 90s, I think even a little bit before that, but so this middle 2000s shouldn't be a problem. In terms of protocols, there is a column in the data entry sheets that allows you to specify what protocol was used for data collection, and a different one for the analytical method. So if they're changing, or if 1 year one method was used and that is changed, you would have to add to the controlled vocabulary list for that list, but then in your data entry template, you reference the new protocol. So that shouldn't keep it off of Ceden either.
We have time for an additional.
This is just kind of like a what-if question, I think. But assuming I had a good data set, I send it in, I get it into Ceden, but I want to make a broader report, and I know of 3 or 4 other databases that I would like to consolidate into a single report back to me. Do I do that within Ceden? As far as pulling similar studies together, and then what's my output? I guess I'm looking for an end product that I input into Ceden. I improve my data situation by having lots of more data, and then I want to draw it out and use it. So how do I do that? Or are we going to talk about that this afternoon?
I don't think we're going to talk about that this afternoon, but what I would suggest is that that pathway outside that I had, oh, there it is. So we have the advanced query tool. It allows you to search by a variety of different things, but one would be program. So if you wanted to know, you were providing a report of grantees that received Prop 50 grants. We have a program called Prop 50, and you could use that as your query tool and pull out all the data that were monitoring projects that related to that Prop 50 program. And there are many other programs. That's just the one that popped into my head. So if it's something that all the data that you're interested in is in one program, then you can query by program. Then there's another level parent project. So if they're related kind of one layer down from that, you can query on that. If you are I'm interested in, you have a water body, you can look at our station map and see which stations might be of interest of you might be interested in, and just to select those stations to pull to be your query tool or your query criteria. You can do it by station, or you might have to do some research. Maybe of a group that's doing work in a certain area, and you can find out what their project identifier is and use that to query on from Ceden. And then once you have that information using the advanced query tool, you get an Excel output using data.ca.gov. That doesn't allow you to query, but if you were into making your own kind of coding your own API query, then you could put that into your API code of which things that you wanted to query out. And same thing with the National Water Quality Monitoring Portal. You also have a variety of things to say by county or by whatever. They have a lot of criteria that you can query on, and that allows you to get a URL that if in 6 months you want to see how the data has changed using that same query, you have a URL that you can just call, and then it'll pull that using that same criteria, see what data have been updated. So, but all of those spit out in a CSV format or an Excel document, depending on how big it is. Does that answer your question?
But once that's queried, then I have like an account number I can go back to and it's all automatically updated for that particular search? with the URL?
Using the National Water Quality Monitoring Portal, that's how that works. It's a nice tool.
Thank you.